Um, I want to welcome everybody to the current edition of our webinar series. And tonight, I think we have something very interesting that people could really sort of sink their teeth into, and it's increasing your grit factor. Our presenter tonight is Dr. Chris Curran. Chris holds a doctoral degree in sport and performance psychology from the University of Western States and a master's degree in human performance from Lindenwood University. He's worked with the U.S. Department of Defense, teaching psychology as a consultant for their leadership and command teams. He was an assistant cycling coach at Lindenwood when he was a grad student there. And I know he works with a number of power-up clients on the sports psychology side of things. And without further ado, I'll hand the presentation over to Chris.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you all being here tonight, even though it's such a nice, lovely evening outside. I know I see Pablo's out there. It's a nice setup, you said. But yeah, increasing your grit. So grit, it's, some people have it, some people don't. Is that the consensus? But I want to kind of demystify how you can build that and that everybody can be a little bit more grittier. So the presentation tonight, we're going to define what grit is, what the actual measurements are to see what your grit score is. We won't have everybody do their own personal grit score, but I provided a link in there for you too. And then we're going to look at some strategies, tools, and habits to increase your grit and really look at some of the strategies on how it can improve your performance on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or even longer than that. So let's get right into it. So defined, grit is Angela Duckworth is credited with the renewed definition of grit, which is passion and sustained persistence applied toward long-term achievement without concern for rewards of recognition along the way. So it's a long-winded way of saying passion and persistence towards a long-term goal. And that's pretty much boiled down to what grit is. So you have a big goal that you're working towards, and that can be whether it's an Ironman or a bike race that's a national championship or a criterium or whatever it might be, a century that you're trying to accomplish or anything along those lines. It can be in any discipline as well. So grit was really looked at from the standpoint of what makes some students succeed as opposed to other students succeed. And there's this big debate, it's like, is it talent or is it persistence or is it passion? What is it? And Duckworth really kind of goes into detail about what grit is. Because let's say, for example, you have one student who's just, they're really smart. Let's say their IQ is, 120, 130. They're 2 standard deviations above where the norm is. And, but that kid, they might be not the hardest worker, but they do well on standardized tests, things like that. And then you have another kid who, they show up early, they leave late, they ask all the questions, they're doing all the work. And what they find is that IQ, while it is a good determiner of success, what is a really good determiner of success is actually grit. And as you get into the research a little bit more, you find that the necessary components of grit are like stress, agitation, and confusion. And what that means is you have to really lean into those things when that happens. So, the best example that I can come up with is a student doing a math problem. There's like stress, agitation, and confusion within that. But the same is true in cycling. Like in cycling, you're going to be stressed, you're going to be agitated, and you're going to be confused some of the time, especially when you have a big block of training or you're at power up and the workouts, you're getting near minute 45 and you have VO2 efforts and you're really pushing the limit on what you're capable of, you're going to be a little bit agitated and confused and stressed in that time period. So the best thing to do is just really lean into right there and where you are and look at and actually see what those things are. And as you start looking at those from a perspective of, hey, I need a little bit of stress, agitation, and confusion, because those are the precursors of what I need to do in order to achieve the long-term success. And we'll come back to the stress, agitation, and confusion. But as you get into deliberate practice, so another component of grit is deliberate practice, which is deep focus and high effort. And the research on deliberate practice was originally done with chess players. So they were looking at what comprises of a good chess player. And what they found out was that the actual chess players, they broke down the game pieces in the smallest, if you're a chess player, so you look at like what do the pawns do and the series of chess movements, and they're looking at how each component is broken down and looking at it from the big into the small. And the same can be true as you apply it to cycling. If you're looking at doing a workout, you have the big into the small. So you think your long-term goal is, let's say it's a century ride or a double century, which is 200 miles or Dirty Kansas or anything along those lines of a criterion. What do you actually have to break down? Is it the interval, the effort? So looking at it in terms of, you have to do the zone 3 work, the zone 4, zone 5, looking at those VO2 efforts. So really, you have to break each component down. And you have to go in with the expectation that this is going to be hard and it's going to require the stress, agitation, and confusion. So going back to that math problem, those math students we were talking about who were doing in math, those students coming into it with the frame of reference of you can't be scared of what you're going into, because a lot of, what students do oftentimes, if they're really going into a math problem, while one student believes that they can succeed, but the other student thinks that they're not going to be able to succeed, they're already experiencing that stress, agitation, and confusion. And the same is true with cycling. If you think the VO2 effort, this is going to be really hard, this is just going to be agitating, I'm not going to be able to hit my numbers, I'm not going to be able to do this. The same is true. You're going to not lean into that. So you have to look at it as the stress, agitation, and confusion is a precursor to the long-term success, because we need to feel those emotions or the agitation that comes along with being confused and being stressed. And with that in mind, it really plays out into whatever we're doing in whatever component. So we have to really reframe how we're thinking about the stress, confusion, or agitation. And so kind of going back to what grit is, and grit is a personality trait. And so grit as a personality trait, it's closely aligned with the Big Five personality trait, which is conscientiousness. So within the Big Five theory of personality, there's different components of the actual personality. There's openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So of those 5, we're looking at conscientiousness, and conscientiousness aligns closely to grit, with the exception of the grit encompasses conscientiousness and self-control. So self-control being more like discipline. And if you think of discipline, it's basically the ability to have self-control of the waking up in the morning, knowing that you have to go do the workout, and it's making that decision in real time and saying, am I going to sleep in, or am I going to get up and go do the workout? And that's the self-control that really goes down to long-term success. Because if you're able to persevere and really pursue that, you're able to lean into that discomfort, the agitation, the stress and confusion that we were talking about, the precursors to what we need. Then you start to develop the long-term grit. And so grit is more of a long-term goal. So you have to break it down into really small components, and then you get a big long-term goal. And so you might be wondering, hey, where do I measure up on my grit score? So Angela Duckworth, she developed the grit score. So I put on one of the sample questions. It's only 10 questions. And these questions are at angeladuckworth.com/grit scale. If you just Google search grit scale, you'll find it right away. And it's a nice printout that she does, and it gives you a raw score of where you fit on that grit scale. So out of 5, it might be out of 10, where you fit on that. So setbacks don't discourage me. I don't easily give up. So if that's not like me, or it's somewhere on that Likert scale, so answering those questions and seeing where you are, and it's a series of questions. But back to conscientiousness. Conscientiousness is a group of skills. So being that your industriousness, your orderliness. So industriousness means that you're getting the tasks done that you say you're going to get done. And we have to look at conscientiousness and grit as a norm of distribution on the population. So everybody, there's 2 ends to the bell curve. We all fit somewhere on that based on the population, and conscientiousness is aligned closely to, so we fit somewhere in the distribution or of the percentile. So you might be at the 50th percentile, which puts you straight in the middle, or you could be at the 95th percentile. My guess is that if you're here tonight and you're listening to this, you're probably more so on further to the right of a higher percentile, just because you're curious, you're wanting to look at how can you improve. And those are kind of some of the things that we're looking at as well when you're looking at conscientiousness. And the big 5 personality traits, I don't want to get too much into this, but I think it's important to note that there is good validity and reliability across populations. So there's good, so it measures up across populations, whether that's male, female, and across cultural groups. So wherever you fall on that score, it's worldwide. And those personality traits are, some of it is a genetic component where you do have the personality of your parents, and some of it's environmental. So there is some components about that as well. So let's say if your parents are really high in grit or conscientiousness in this, how we're talking about it, then you're more likely to be more conscientious or more have more grit and persevere. But there's also that environmental factor as well, and looking at how scheduling and things like that. And I don't want to get too much, because I think you get into the weeds a little bit, but know that they're too closely aligned. And I'm sorry if you hear my dogs in the background. I've got 2 Australian shepherds that are get a little rambunctious if somebody walks by. So this is my question for Jim, and it's a perfect time, so I'll mute my mic so you won't hear my dogs. And so what is more important, Jim? Do you think talent or grit? The athletes that you work with, you see some of them have high talent, let's say on the Gateway team or some local athletes, or do you see the long-term success over grit?
I mean, I would have to say grit. And the reason I say that is not to make the talk go well, but there's a lot of athletes out there with success. I mean, everybody on this phone call, I'm sure, has known multiple people in their lives who had all kinds of talent and never put it to work. Whereas other people who had less talent but they were just they just never gave up. And that's certainly the case in cycling. I can name a number. I mean, one of the, a story I've told many times is probably the most successful cyclist I ever coached was Kevin Livingston. And Kevin ended up being a World Tour pro. He rode 6 Tour de France's. But it was interesting because he was obviously very talented. You don't get to that level unless you are. But he also had tremendous grit. And I remember when he was a teenager, and there'd be, some kid from another team would smack talk and suggest that Kevin really wasn't that good. And I always felt sorry for that kid, because Kevin was not only going to beat the kid, he was going to make the kid suffer while he was beating the kid. And I mean, he was one of those rare athletes that has the genetic gifts and has the determination to make the most of them.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Like you said, I'm sure we all know a few athletes who, they peaked early and then they've kind of just fizzled out. And they were very successful early on, but they didn't have that determination. And obviously Kevin had both. And I think he's a great example of like what really talent and persistence really gets you. But I think I was listening. Angela Duckworth has she went into this and said that if you break down talent or into what it actually is, and more like a algebraic equation, she said that if you look at skill, it's almost like it's developed through effort. So you have that. So you might have somebody who's talented and their skill, and that only gets you so far. But if you multiply that by effort and talent, now all of a sudden you have really accelerated the process, because talent will only get you so far, but effort is really what persists over time. And I think it's important to note too that you can use these grit principles for any endeavor. So they looked at what makes people successful in any endeavor and really kind of backwards looked at it, and they used the regression analysis and said these are the components that really make these individuals successful. And there was that passion and perseverance over time. So it can be whether it's at work or whether it's on the bike or any endeavor that you're trying to go for. The passion and the perseverance is really what's key towards a long-term goal. So it can be applied across principles as well. So this one is, what is the hack or shortcut to increase grit? And there just isn't. I hear a lot of individuals, they talk about what the hack is, or how do you shortcut to get to grit? And the true answer is you just have to put in the work, and the work over time. And that's really what gets you to where you want to go. And I'm sure a lot of you have had success in multiple endeavors, and you know how much work that it takes in order to get anywhere. So it's really about, you can have a baseline talent, but the effort that you put towards it is really where you go and what you pursue. And that's really, despite setbacks, despite the confusion, agitation, and stress that does occur, when you do apply these grit principles, that long-term success and persist, that's really where you start getting into it. So let's go ahead and look at some strategies. So this is one I use for a lot of my athletes that I have. And and this is a writing prompt. It's a narrative of who you want to be and who you are and what you have to do in order on a daily and weekly basis in order to maintain the path that you'd like to get to. And it really starts getting you to think about what you need to think about, what you need to feel, what does it sound like and look like. And it has a really good component towards where you want to go in 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years. And it really starts to get you to think about your future self, because the goal setting part of grit is probably the most important, because it gives you the why, and you start to think about how the bigger picture and what your goals, and you have to break them down over time. And so that's one of them. And this is one that I think is really powerful when we take it seriously and see and reflect on it, and then revisiting it as you go forward. But there are some other ways that you can increase your grit more rapidly, if you will. So increasing your grit. Yeah.
I'm sorry, before we leave that last slide, and I just wanted to interject something here. In my experience, when in cycling specifically, but I think this is the case in so many other things in life, is but before you move to that next level, before you're actually there, you have to see yourself there. You have to believe that you belong there. And you're not entering into your event, hoping for, some miracle performance. It's like you literally see yourself at that level before it actually happens. In the business world, my experience, and I'm sure a lot of people on the phone can relate to this too, is a lot of times, at least in my experience in the business world, before you actually get a promotion to a new position, you're already doing the job. And finally, somebody recognizes the fact that you're doing the job, and they give you the promotion. But it's like, the being there mentally, being there is, happens sooner than actually being there physically.
Yeah, well said, Jim. I think it's like you said, it's like being there mentally before you're there physically is almost it's the right recipe for how you take that. You see yourself successful and really start to see yourself where you want to be. And it's not like I'm not big on just thinking positive thoughts and kind of going from there. I don't think that is really a good approach to how you want to manifest what you want to do, but it's creating the plan. Like you said, it's you're already doing what you want to do to get the promotion. So it's almost like you have to write down the actual steps, like a plan you would in a business plan or in a cycling training plan. You look at, if you have an athlete that's an Olympic contender, you're now planning 4 years for 4 years. So you're doing blocks of 4 years for their training plan. And so you're just reverse planning what you want to do and accomplish. And as you get older, one of the things that you find is that when the research supports this is that you increase your conscientiousness. So you increase your grit is basically what they're saying. And that's because, a lot of 20-year-olds are kind of aimlessly wandering around, not knowing what they want to pursue. And as you get to where you want to pursue, you start to take aim and really start to see, and you're starting to really put your sights on where you want to take aim and really go after those endeavors. So you're really starting to tweak where you want to go, and now you have a plan. And that's more so where the next slide takes us, is actually increasing your grit on a weekly or a monthly basis. And it's not rocket science. It's not, it's like make a list, do the list. and set your goals, do your goals. But one of the things I really find with a lot of athletes I work with is making the goals a really low barrier to entry. And this sounds kind of reversed. But what I mean by this is, like, if you're struggling to get into a habit or routine, make the goal so easy that you can't avoid it. And that's like, if you wanted to, let's make it real baseline for here. If you said, I wanted to go out for a walk every day, well, make your walk 2 minutes and just say, I'm going to walk 2 minutes each day. And your barrier to entry is like, man, if you didn't accomplish that, like, where you have 2 minutes to go out and do a deliberate walk, if you will. So making that goal so easy that you can do it, whether that's get on the bike for 10 minutes in the morning, see how I feel. And after 10 minutes, what you usually find is, well, you're now riding for an hour or however much time you have. And the person walking, they're doing the same thing. It's like, they may have made it to 2 minutes. Now they're all of a sudden, they're walking for 30 minutes and they've made the barrier to entry, but it's just to get them to get up and out the door. It's the activation energy that they need. And structuring your environment. So structuring your environment is essentially like, putting your trainer in a room that you can see and being able to go to that room, or putting your running shoes right next to your bed. So the first thing you see is your running shoes, and you already have your breakfast, your bags packed, and you're ready to walk out the door in the morning. So you don't have an excuse to not get out and get the workout in. And so building those habits, I like to challenge some of the athletes I work with in order to get them in a routine on what they need to do. And I often will say, like, well, what do you want to do every single day? What is something that you want to do? And challenging them to build a streak. So having them do, maybe it's a small stretching or core routine every single day. It's very basic, 10 minutes, but they're doing it every day. So it starts building that muscle, building the habit that they're doing those little things every day. So then they're not saying, like, well, I want to do it 3 out of 4 days or 3 out of 3 days in a week. And then all of a sudden you get to Sunday and you're doing all 3 sessions at Sunday night at 11:30, and that's not productive. And so going back to what are the strategies that we need? Another one is just having a list, right? And prioritizing a list. You find that individuals who are successful have a list. They have a list of things that they want to accomplish each day, and making a list and prioritizing that list and doing the first 3 high priority items first. And that's what you do. And what you find is, like, you start to build on these successes. And if you keep doing this, you start to really start building that almost compounding interest of exponentially better each day, because you're now accomplishing these little tiny small tasks. It's just micro improvements over time, and that's what really carries you forward. But it's like having the ability to break it down in such a small structure and not being overwhelmed by the big goal, and really seeing what you want to do. So one of the things I thought was interesting is how do you develop grit in others? So some of you might be in a leadership position, or some of you might be in a coaching position, or any position where you have an influence over other people, whether it could be anybody, really. We all have an influence over somebody. But this is a really good strategy to really take aim at. And it's naming a specific strategy, skill, or behavior that leads to the positive outcome. So I wrote a few examples down here, and the first one is more so for like kids. Like if you have kids, or you know somebody with kids, or but it's basically focused on the talent or focused on the grit, left and right respectively. So first one, you did well on your test. You're smart. And that's focused on the person, they did well on the test, and they said you did well because you're smart. But if you want to focus on increasing their grit, you start to say, I noticed how hard you studied for your test. And now all of a sudden you're changing to the process. You're changing it to what they actually did. So they did was they studied. On the flip side, on the bike, it's like, you're fast on the bike. Well, or you could say, and this could go be for anything, you said, I see you've really been putting the work and time and effort in your training, and it's been really showing. Now, the second one is always going to lead to more, and that's going to lead to, hey, they recognize that I'm putting the time in on the bike, and that's going to lead to more positive outcomes, because they're going to leave into the feedback loop, and they want the positive outcome, and they know that increasing the time on the bike or increasing the effort on the bike is what leads them to actually have those better intervals. So that's almost the end there. And so, like Jim said, I do work with athletes and in any endeavor. So I work with athletes, some business professionals in some respects, and almost and let's say conscientiousness, and you want to broaden that trait, you can increase that trait and start to really look at what are people doing who are high in conscientiousness or high in grit are doing, and how you can broaden that personality trait in order to have some of the better strategies that we've talked about. And I want to open this up to you guys, and really understand what questions that you all have. You all came here for some reason or in some capacity. I was curious, what questions do you have? What brought you here tonight? Maybe I didn't answer something that you guys have, and maybe we can dig into that a little deeper.
Hey, Chris, this is Steve Fuller.
Hey, Steve.
I didn't really come in with a question, but listening to your presentation made me kind of think of the goal I'm shooting for right now is assuming the markets and the pandemic will allow us. One of my friends is retiring in June, about a year from now, and we're going to ride the Tour Divide to celebrate his retirement.
Sweet.
So that's pretty intimidating, but that's why I'm showing up on Jim's calendar every week to, do the work, put the work in now, so that I'm not off the back every day somewhere on the Continental Divide. And so just thinking of it from that perspective really kind of makes me realize I didn't know I was increasing my grit, but it seems like that's what I'm doing. I'm just looking for any other pointers for a goal, say a year away.
Yeah, absolutely. So goal setting is almost like it's a pretty big process. And when I do work with athletes on the goal setting process, it can take up to 2 hours. And because you want to make it short, you want to have like the priority areas, and then have action items associated with those priority areas. So yours might be like, mountain biking, is that correct? And then you're also camping, gear oriented. So you might have some goals around those processes, like orienting yourself around those. So developing the three priorities. So one might be fitness, one might be nutrition, the other one might be where are you going to put the food, things like that. And the other one might be just whatever other realm that you could think of, and then having those action steps accordingly, really breaking it down to those weekly process goals, which are, I'm sure you're familiar with, like the SMART goals, the specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Having those but really focusing on the time bound and saying like, what do you need to do each week? So thinking about it like in terms of, I need to show up to Power Up 3 times per week. And then that gives you a very actionable oriented goal that you're hitting 3 times per week. And I like the weekly goals when it comes to really setting those, because then it gives you something to reflect on each week and really checking in, and also looking at it in terms of how are you planning your goals and putting a date on the calendar ahead of time. Let's say it's, you know, for conversation's sake, it's August 1st today, and 3 months from now, November, 3 months from there, where are you? 3 months from there, writing those dates on the calendar and making those check-ins, so having those reminders of like checking back in with your goal. Where am I? How do I need to course correct in that capacity?
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. I appreciate you. I mean, you brought some things to my mind that I'm probably trying to do subconsciously, but I really haven't written them down. You know,
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, whether it's planning, how are you going to get your nutrition every day, but how are you packing a bike every day? So it's, you know, not taking an hour. You can do it in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like you said, there's a little bit of a learning curve to some of these goals to some extent. And, you know, you might get to the point where you're so proficient at it, looking at it in those terms of like how you research and those types of things. So yeah, I think
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any questions or any other big
Chris,
goals that they're working on? Yeah.
quick question here, Paulo. So where do you see in your experience people failing the most on getting the grades? Because what I see after the explanation is that grit is what comes on top of talent. So you can have talent, but if you get grits, you can really go to the next level, no? So where do you see the people failing on how to get these grits?
You know, and where do I see people failing? I think it's, that's a good question. I don't know if I see individuals failing. More so, I think that they have like it's almost like the best way of saying it is like if you want to instill grit in a child, it's almost you want to almost expose them to whatever they like, to many different things. Let's say sports, instruments, all these different things. You want to see what sticks, and what sticks is where they have passion. So all of us are here tonight. We're affiliated with Power Up, so we obviously have something stuck in cycling for all of us, and so we all have a passion about that. So I would say that we have a high level of grit in cycling. So it's almost where your passion and perseverance are aligned. So it's I wouldn't say it's necessarily about failure, because I think failure is sometimes good when we're talking about grit. Because let's say, like from my own personal experience, I played the saxophone through grade school. I hated the saxophone. I never practiced, but I did not like it. My parents just bought it for me. Now, the first opportunity I quit. And that was one of the only things that I really didn't stick with. But I couldn't stand it. So it's not almost, it's finding what pursuit that you actually have, and then figuring that out. And then with the passion, it's almost like when you see somebody with a passion and perseverance and then breaking the skill down, that's when they start to accelerate and almost have that obsessive quality to it, because you know, you're wanting to get better and better each day. And when it almost comes easy, and once you find where you're passionate, and then you're able to excel. And I think for the most part, you know, when you're working with an athlete, they're very passionate about their sport, but they may not be as passionate in, let's say, their work. So using some of the skills like the scheduling and the prioritizing might be better for them in that capacity and for their work, but with their sport, they're starting to accelerate. I don't know if that answered your question or
Yep.
not.
Clear. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, you have a question from David?
Go ahead. Is it in the
It's
chat?
in the chat, yeah.
Do you see it? Could you read it?
Yeah, it's how do you measure your fitness goals? I'm planning a 480-mile bike ride in 7 days in 2021. How do I measure that I am achieving quantity numerical goals?
So for the fitness goals, if I'm understanding it correctly, like just checking in to see if you're hitting the actual goal.
Yeah, I guess that looks to be David's question.
So just seeing, breaking it down, if you have looking at, I think, Jim, you're almost, I think this would be a good question for you on where the training plan might come in and looking at how, you're breaking down like the specificity from 4 months out, 6 months out. So I'll pass that one off to you, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, really, that speaks to a progressive training plan where, if I'm doing, I'm doing 100 or 480 miles in 7 days, over time, you just gradually build that up. So maybe you start at 100 miles a week. And then over the course of, of the next 3 months, maybe you work up to 175 miles a week. And then the next, over the course of the next 3 months, now you're at 250 a week. And you just gradually build up so that you're confident that, that I can do, I've done, I've done like 3 centuries. So I know I can do, me finishing this 100-mile ride is not a big deal. I can do that. Yeah, I mean, that's how training plans are built. Whether the goal is, distance or whether the goal is speed. When it's speed, it's something altogether different, but it's still a progressive plan that is, that moves along in increments. I don't think, physically, you need, like we talked about earlier, you need to know that you can see it in your mind first. And the way you see it in your mind is you put in the work to give yourself confidence that I know I can go this long. I've done, 10 centuries this year. So I know I can do, 480 miles in 7 days. And that's, you just gradually build up to that. And so you're building up the physical side, but you're also building up your confidence that, I've put in the work, I can do this. Kind of a long answer to a short question, but that's how it works.
Thanks, Jim. Is it? Anybody have any other questions?